Ladies and gentlemen, 2024 is upon us, and of course, as we enter into the new year, by the way, Happy New Year, and I hope you guys have had an amazing Christmas break as well. There are an awful lot of things to be excited for in gaming as well as hardware releases. By the way, as a slight side note, if you're interested in a specific game, perhaps if it's a smaller title that isn't as well known, let me know down in the comments below in case it's flew under my radar. But for the PC side, we're expecting lots of GPU and CPU releases, and for consoles, well, the new Switch 2 is expected to be announced some point this year, and I think it's going to be a very interesting console. I also have a couple of small updates for that, so I'm probably going to be putting out a video in the not too distant future, assuming I can get a couple of aspects of the info that I've been hearing confirmed. But of course, the focus of this video is going to be the PlayStation 5 Pro. We're expecting Sony to release this upgraded hardware later this year. Personally, I'm expecting a kind of similar time frame to what we saw with the PS4 Pro, so probably an announcement in Q3 this year. That's just a guesstimate based on, again, previous timeframes. Now, if you've been a regular viewer of the channel, you'll know that I've covered a lot of aspects of the PS5 Pro in regards to the hardware, the CPU, the GPU, and many other aspects of the machine. But there's been a very interesting rumour that's been on and off concerning the PS5 Pro, and that is the discussion regarding machine learning, upscaling, and other types of technology. Well, there's a very interesting leak that's popped up courtesy of the Sony hack, and we're going to be discussing that in this video along with some other stuff as well. As you're probably going to guess, we're going to get right into it after this message from the video's sponsor. If you're running a copy of Windows 10 which isn't activated, of course, not only do you have to worry about the missing customization options, but there's also that annoying Windows desktop watermark reminding you to activate. Today's video is sponsored by whokeys.com, and they've an excellent price on Windows 10 Professional as well as home keys. Yeah, and they also of course sell games. I've bought a few Windows 10 keys with my own personal account to test everything was legit and worked in preparation for this sponsored video. You can pick up one of their keys for 25% off using the coupon code RGT in the checkout. There's links to their website in the video description. Also, if you're building a few systems, there's bundles available too. Again, you can check out whokeys.com and use the coupon code RGT for 25% off the listed Windows 10 key prices. Now, this is certainly a very big topic when it comes to AI, machine learning, upscaling. And it's not a small detail when discussing this stuff to actually kind of narrow the focus just a little bit. When discussing AI and upscaling, there are specific cases, and personally, I've heard that the next generation console from Sony, PlayStation 6, will heavily be pushing AI for a lot of other purposes other than, for example, upscaling. One of those is generative purposes. Now, I don't want to spend too long going over that here, because I'm going to be putting out another video regarding this topic pretty soon. But basically speaking, generative AI in this particular case for, let's say, the PS6 would allow NPCs to behave a lot more naturally. You can speak to them. You wouldn't have to rely, for example, on pre-recorded lines of dialogue. They would also behave smarter. For example, they would better be able to cover you. You would be able to, speaking, so for example, you would physically be able to say something along the lines of, "Cover me, I am reloading," and they would basically be able to understand what you're referring to and behave, well, as you would expect. And this also is something that, of course, has a lot of implications for, let's say, RPGs, where you could have a lot more dialogue with an NPC. Now, NVIDIA are already doing some very cool stuff here. The ramen shop demo is in public, and you can see some really cool stuff. If you Google NVIDIA ramen shop demo, you can see some stuff on screen as well. It's really cool, and again, you can basically talk to the ramen shop owner, I think if memory serves, his name is Jin, and have a reasonable conversation. But again, I'll go more into that in another video because it's quite a large topic, and I've been hearing some stuff through, let's say, sources, plus also there is quite a lot of official information which is quite intriguing. But regarding the PS5 Pro, specifically this leak that we're going to be talking about here, it seems to be much more in line with upscaling and image reconstruction. Now, there have been a bunch of leaked documents which have surfaced online thanks to, or, well, I don't really want to say thanks to because, well, it was a hack. Of course, what happened with, well, the Sony breach. And basically speaking, I don't want to share the image that popped up, although it's on Reddit, and I want to give credit to WCCF Tech for bringing this to my attention via an article. I will put the text on screen, but I'm writing that text basically out from the image, but again, I'll leave links to this, of course, in the description. So on screen, you can see what the text says on this slide. Ziva, which is film quality facial animation, muscle and cloth simulation, destruction 2.0, hierarchical destruction, healing factor, real-time damage and generation, real-time global illumination, dynamic weather and foliage, 60 FPS base frame rate, performance RT, photogrammetry pipeline, AI upscaling, machine learning, which as you probably gathered is the focus here, fluid dynamics, that's TBD, basically they're still deciding this and it's being investigated internally, deformable surfaces, snow and mud, and motion matching, improved locomotion. Now of course there are a lot of standout points here and I'm not going to go over all of them, but again, we will see this title offer up to 60 FPS in performance mode with ray tracing enabled. So that, of course, we've seen in a lot of Insomniac games, as well as other games from Sony in their first-party lineup. There are a number of other points, and this is really what this is. They're kind of targets for the game. For example, the healing factor thing. They also want very impressive facial animations and that type of stuff. Another big one, of course, is the snow. This is going to be deformable. So, obvious things would be you could leave footsteps in it, tire tracks. Things falling into the snow, of course, would deform it. Real-time global illumination, which, of course, would be backed up with the ray tracing. And the main focus here, of course, is AI upscaling using machine learning. Now, Sony have been pushing AI upscaling for some time, albeit not necessarily always with machine learning. The PS4, for example, they did various temporal reconstruction methods. The PS4 Pro used rapid pack math, or FP16, to basically do checkerboard rendering faster. And of course, that's just something that Sony have been pushing. There's a lot of upscaling solutions out there. Nvidia, of course, have their own proprietary DLSS. You have Unreal Engine with their stuff. Intel have their own technologies, and of course AMD themselves have various FSR techs as well. Now FSR doesn't rely on machine learning. This is according to AMD's own documents, by the way, as well as developers. Now we're going to get more into this in a moment, because what I think we need to do again is get very specific. Is this technology even in reference to the PS5 Pro, and also is it even something that the PS5 Pro would be required for? Or could it also run on the base model? Well, it's worth noting that as of the time I'm recording this, I'm being told that there is no machine learning block specifically on the PS5 Pro whatsoever. A WCCF article, the same one of course with the slide I mentioned earlier, it does say that another leak online was stating that it does have this type of machine learning block, but my own sources, they are very adamant it doesn't. Kepler L2 has got a really good track record, and he also believes that there is no dedicated AI accelerator cores on the PS5 Pro. Now, to be clear here, this doesn't mean that it can't run machine learning. When I say that it doesn't have dedicated AI accelerator cores, that would be something like NVIDIA's Tensor Core technology, or something from Xilinx, which AMD purchased, and this basically is just a very specific piece of silicon which does only machine learning. And again, from what I'm hearing, this is not part and parcel of the PS5 Pro. I would be actually quite interested if my information was wrong, and it was, but I don't think it is, and I think it's more likely it's going to be on the PS6, or Sony are going to handle things very differently for the PS6 for machine learning. So let's ask ourselves for a second, if this is for the PS5 Pro, how will it even run? Well, of course the answer is on the GPU. We know from leaks that the PS5 Pro uses RDNA 3, almost certainly. It's almost certainly going to be some type of hybrid design, because it always is with consoles, but in essence it's going to have some type of RDNA 3 base. Now, the good news for us is that AMD have already documented RDNA 3 because it's been available for desktop for absolutely ages. Now, it's possible that there may be some RDNA 4 elements for the PS5 Pro. I've been told by a couple of sources that there are, and other sources are telling me no, it's purely based on RDNA 3, so I don't know. For the sake of this video, I can't speculate on something that I'm not too certain of, so I'm just going to say RDNA 3. But anyway, I won't get ultra technical on the differences of how RDNA 3 handles machine learning. There's a lot of documentation from AMD, of course. I will leave some links in the description of the video. But a couple of big things that AMD did with RDNA 3, again, all of this is official, is RDNA 3's machine learning technology has WMMA, or Wave Matrix Multiply Accumulate. This accelerates GEM, or Generalized Matrix Multiplication. From AMD's own blog post on GPU Open, we can see the screenshot of what this entails. WMMA supports inputs of FP16 or BF16. Now, this is primarily used for training data. So for the purpose of this video, I want you to do the following. Just take that information and throw it into the trash, because it's not something that you're actually going to be seeing Sony incorporate most likely for this. Now, it's really interesting for other users. For example, there's a patent that we saw recently from Sony, and I'm sure you probably saw this floating around online. But basically, the PlayStation system essentially can learn how you're playing and give you tips, basically, to improve. So, hypothetically, let's say that you're facing a boss and you keep rolling to the, let's just say, the right for an attack, and you're actually supposed to roll to the left. Let's just hypothetically say. And the system could say, hey, you know what? We're watching you play, and what you're doing when you're getting hit is simply mistiming it. So you need to roll a split second later, but you need to roll the opposite direction. So you could turn those tips on. However, that would basically be training you using your data from player inputs. The interesting thing with this patent, however, is it seems to be referencing some type of online environment. So I don't know whether this is going to be something that's done locally or not. Either way, that would be training, but what we are actually referring to here is something that would be called inference. So that's inference is where the data is already trained and you're simply running it. So most likely culprits using this stuff anyway, assuming there's no very specific thing that AMD are incorporating on the behalf of Sony for the PS5 Pro, would be something like the 4 or 8-bit integer stuff. Now, AMD did do a lot of work to basically improve AI running on RDNA 3. Again, it doesn't have dedicated machine learning cores. For example, what NVIDIA have with, let's say, the RTX 40 series of cards, the Tensor cores. So all of this machine learning stuff runs on the same compute units as the general graphics work. But the GPU essentially does its best to schedule this work so it doesn't impact performance. We actually have a developer quote on this, and we're going to get to that in a second. So AMD did some stuff under the hood to bolster this. Improvements to the L0, L1, and L2 caches. Raised the number of SIMD registers, enhancing the RDNA 3 compute unit. Now, of course, it's possible that the PS5 Pro doesn't actually incorporate some of this stuff, but you imagine it probably would. You can see on screen the enhanced compute unit pair, and it looks kind of similar at a glance for RDNA 2. And to be honest with you guys, if you just glanced at it and said, well, which one's which, I wouldn't blame you, but there are differences. The first block states float integer matrix SIMD32, and the second block is float/matrix 32. Basically, this is new to RDNA 3 and allows to improve the floating point performance. You might have also heard of terms for the RDNA 3 architecture like dual issue, that type of stuff. It's going to be very interesting to see how Sony incorporates all of this, to be honest, and I'm very much hoping that Mark Cerny, if and when the PS5 Pro is announced, does kind of a full breakdown. But anyway, so there you have it. That's the smoking gun. That means the PS5 Pro features this technology, and this technology is exclusive to the PS5 Pro. Well, I mean, Sony have done a lot of work here. As I mentioned, they've been pushing image reconstruction for quite some time, and even ray tracing reconstruction as well. There's a conference I've mentioned several times over from Sony, and this was uploaded on our official YouTube channel. I don't know if it's still there, but basically ray tracing uses a bunch of rays literally shot into the screen, which then bounce around, and those rays and how they interact with the scene are used to calculate shadows and lighting. Now, I'm simplifying this significantly, and the real explanation of how this works is massively more complicated and longer than this, but in any case, the more rays which are used, the more detail can be gathered in the scene. However, the more rays obviously also means more work. So techniques like denoising are therefore used to fill in basically the blanks. Sony's technology, in this particular instance, seems to be kind of using machine learning to help with this. It's not too dissimilar to NVIDIA's DLSS 3.5 technology for ray tracing reconstruction, but certainly isn't the exact same. There are some differences. However, it's worth noting, of course, that not all of the technical minutiae is being stated here. But anyway, the question is then, how about the base model PS5? And again, is this something that's exclusive? Well, we must remember that it's very possible that the technique here isn't anything exclusive to the PS5 Pro, just that they can also run on the PS5 as well, but maybe the PS5 Pro has better technology, so it will run faster or just with improvements. To my understanding, the compute units of the PS5 base model console are essentially based on RDNA 2, the same as the ray tracing units. Sony did do some custom work to the GPU, such as the geometry engine being used on the console is their own design. It's not something AMD created. But according to all of the official statements from AMD, Sony, etc., they are essentially RDNA 2 CUs. So what this would mean is that lower precision operations such as 8-bit ops, again see AMD's own blog post, could potentially be used for Sony as well. Now, honestly, without official confirmation, and they haven't officially confirmed that there's 8-bit operations which can be used, but actually something that flew under a lot of people's radar is some comments from a lead technical director, Josh DiCarlo. And this actually is in reference to Spider-Man. So he was working on Miles Morales, and Tweaktown actually found this quote, and I think it dates back to like 2021, so it's a little bit old, so again, technology would have improved, but you can see on screen what the quote states. Not sure how specifics I can get with the specs, but you're correct in the assumption that all final deformations are a result of via machine learning inference at runtime on the PS5 hardware. There's no blend shape, skin decomposition, traditional tricks of the trade. High level, we are using highly detailed and anatomically accurate skeleton, muscle, and fat/skin system fitted inside of Miles, along with costumes with varying material properties, cloth, rubber, etc., which are all simulated to produce final per frame deformations. Now again, they don't state how this is being run on the GPU, but it's very possible that this would also be what they're referring to, or these same methods are what they're referring to again with the leaks. So then, to somewhat summarize this video, I think that there is a good chance that we're going to see some beefed up machine learning capabilities on the PlayStation 5 Pro utilizing the GPU itself. However, with this particular leak, it doesn't necessarily mean it is exclusive technology to the PS5 Pro. It's very possible that the PS5 Pro will bolster it, it will be improved, of course, but it doesn't mean that it cannot in theory run in some form or another on the base console. Basically, things are just too ambiguous with this particular slide anyway to call it one way or the other. Sony, however, have been leveraging machine learning and upscaling and other forms of this technology for some time, and of course they're going to continue to double and triple down on this stuff in the future, much like Microsoft and tons of other companies will as well. As for a technology like FSR3, whether it's going to be used with frame generation, honestly, it's just way too early to know right now. Frame generation also does have specific criteria with minimum frame rates and other aspects as well, so it's going to be very interesting, to be honest with you, what direction they go with something like Wolverine. But yeah, I think that's just about it for this particular video. Honestly, this title, should I say this video, ended up being a little longer than what I expected, but there we go. With that said, thanks very much for watching. Have an amazing day. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.